Hi, I'm David Noble. Welcome to the 9 o'clock meeting. Now, I've been doing videos on this channel for probably about 2.5 years and covering various subjects, talking about various people. One thing I've never really covered beyond the usual, pre-season chats, post-season chats, or whatever else is talking about the guy who certainly in current times has been the biggest guy, the biggest face in Formula One, which would of course be Lewis Hamilton. Now, I can talk about his racing, I can talk about his career, I can talk about, quite a few things. I can have a good chat. And with most drivers, that's kind of the conversation. But with Lewis, there's so many other aspects to him and, the legacy that he has in Formula One. And being a 43-year-old guy from the cultural backwater of Suffolk, I'm perhaps not the most qualified person to discuss them. So I've called in help. And it's Nyasha from Quickstop F1. So
Hey.
good to meet you.
Oh, bro, lovely to be here, man. Thanks for having me. Look, anytime someone's like, do you want to talk about Lewis Hamilton? I'm there. So thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
That's cool. There's so much to unpack about him, whether it's just, background, the racing, coming through the system, even small things like, I genuinely believe that if Lewis was trying to go through karting and stuff now, well, we'd be hearing about him as a footballer or a cricketer, not as an F1 driver.
Yeah.
Because, you're looking at the time he was coming through, dad working 3, sometimes 4 jobs,
Yeah.
sleeping on the sofa and playing Stevenage, just picking up a cheap car and trying to just compete in the best way you could do.
Yeah.
I've spoke to enough people who do karting now that you've got guys rocking up to an event with £300 trying to race people with 3,000.
Yeah.
Other people going to an event and their competitors are arriving in helicopters. And the people racing at the front aren't getting change out of 140,000 a year, which is massively insane.
F1 has got to be the most inaccessible sport in the world. Even just by design, right? Like racing a motor car requires some form of capital, right? Like you cannot go motor racing without a car to race, right?
Well, if you look at the single seaters, they've got the car, tires, fuel, spares, paying the mechanics and stuff, keeping the factory lights on. And that's before the transporters,
logistics.
Any things like simulators or anything like that the bigger things have got. Some of the bigger companies have got their own gyms and office space and all sorts. The bigger teams are properly equipped, but all of that costs money.
It costs an insane amount of money, and I think I've never thought of it like that. Lewis being, one of the last Mohicans, I guess. And there's stories like that. We've heard Esteban Ocon, heard about his upbringing. I think a lot of misgivings about Charles Leclerc just because he's from Monaco. I think people assume that he come from an extremely wealthy family, but that's not the case. But I guess with Lewis, and especially like in terms of British drivers, I don't think we're definitely not going to get a story like that, because it is. And look, not only the money side, and I grew up just down the road from Stevenage, so I know Stevenage, and I know, so it even just feels like even more like I can relate to him. But it really is a fairy tale story. You mentioned kind of football there, kind of Roy of the Rovers stuff, right? A kid essentially through like hard work, talent, dad kind of sacrificing his life for him. I think there's a cool story about the carts that he had were old carts from Jenson Button's dad. So
certainly bought engines from
Yeah,
Jensen's dad
engines.
anyway.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. So it's just funny how those things come full circle and their teams. But yeah, that's the. And then Ron Dennis picking him up. Is there ever going to be another team leader in the Ron Dennis mold? Like that kind of mold of team leader is probably not around anymore. So, and then getting into McLaren, then putting him, him. Many kind of ways you're looking at Lewis's story and you look at, would that happen now? Like you say, it's so unlikely, which makes it even more special.
The weird part about Oscar is everyone knows who he is.
Yeah, it's not a secret.
When I remember people in 2006 saying, well, they're talking about signing this Lewis Hamilton. Who is he? If that was now,
Oh yeah,
people would have heard of him like 4 years before when he was doing F4 or something.
yeah. I mean,
It's like by the time he reached GP2 and was leading that, it would be like done deal. Half the people following Formula One would be chatting about him.
And I guess from that side, it may have been easier for him to secure that sponsorship and funding externally if there was hype around him and he was, let's say he was still going to be the first, because there's not been another one since. So if he was still going to be the first black F1 racer, maybe that could have secured him that sponsorship in another way. But for sure, with the way that people view the junior categories now and the way that they're hyped up and the exposure that these kids get, it's just so much more than what Lewis had. And it is incredible to think about it now, right? Like it kind of under the radar slightly.
But that goes a bit with what you were saying earlier on your own podcast. We were talking about 2007. Can you imagine if Drive to Survive had been around then?
What a season.
It's exactly that thing, though. It's just like the way we see the formulas now, the access we've got, what we see of the drivers is just so different to how it was 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, man. I mean, even if you look at it, what are we now? 2022, right? I mean, even if you look at it, 6 years ago? Like, I really, they didn't show race highlights until recently. Like, that's how against social media the Bernie kind of era were. Like they wouldn't show, you wouldn't see clips online, you wouldn't see race highlights, it really was, no focus on that. And we've slowly, it feels weird. What we have now is obviously a lot more open access with DTS and just coverage in general, but it really is a recent development. It's not something that's always been the case at all.
The thing was, I mean, Bernie did a lot to secure F1 TV rights and whatever to make it bigger in the world, to turn it into the big brand it was.
100.
But he was still a guy from the 60s and 70s, wheeler dealing, selling cars.
Yeah.
Technology left him by, but while he was still in charge, as he said himself, he was trying to sell it to the people who had the money, who bought the tickets. He wasn't that bothered about getting the new fans in.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess it makes you realize, though, right? Just how much, I guess, of a sleeping giant F1 was, right? And Liberty must have looked at that and gone, wow, if F1 is doing this well and it's not even touching social media and it's not even trying to engage in younger fans, what is the potential of the sport? And look, I guess we're seeing the good side and the bad side of that, in different ways. But it's crazy to think, we've got someone like Lewis who is really straddling both sides of those eras, right? And that's testament to him.
He was the first person to really sort of push the social media side of it. Not always wisely, like the sharing his teammates' telemetry at Spa, and I think it was 2011. But nobody else was doing it at that point.
No, and God, those years. The thing is, it's crazy. You can look at any celebrity and Twitter in its infancy, before people realized the power of it and the reach of it. Even celebrities, you can go on any celebrity, they've all had missteps on there. But you're right, there's a reason why Lewis has, you know, a bigger social media following than the sport itself. It's because he you know, he realized quite quickly that, you know, is, I guess that was an avenue for him to be able to express himself. And we were, you know, even in the early days, for him to be able to express himself off the track. And obviously that's kind of grown and grown, and we've kind of seen him grow in front of our eyes, really and truly.
Definitely. I mean, McLaren obviously brought him into Formula One. They gave him his big shot and whatever, but it was very corporate.
Yes.
You know, if you look at, I mean, whatever you want to say about Ron Dennis or whatever, and the look of the team or what have you, you know, even when Sergio Perez came in, for example, first thing he had to do, cut his hair and tidy himself up, and he had to fit the corporate image. And that was the McLaren look at the time. You know, Ron Dennis had a way he wanted things, and everybody had to fit in that box.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when, you know, he signed for Mercedes, one of the things Lewis basically said was he wanted kind of the freedom just to be himself.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's crazy. Look, for me, I'll be really honest with you, David. Obviously, I think I'm like 3 or 4 years younger than Lewis, right? So for me, I've always kind of like looked up to Lewis, and I felt my own life not mirrored in terms of success, but mirrored in terms of growing up, right? And seeing someone so visibly black who grew up from down the road from me, grow up in the media. I saw the growing pains in 2011 of him trying to kind of figure out what kind of person he was going to be. You know, he had this American girlfriend, he was friends with P. Diddy and all these things, but it wasn't fitting in. And, you know, there's times where a lot of black people, we have to shrink ourselves to fit in. And I think Lewis was having to do that. The "is it because I'm black" comments at Monaco in 2011, you know, ill-advised, but, you know, there was this frustration, right? And there was this like, and I felt that. And then I also, you know, watching him those early years in Mercedes, I remember when he started wearing chains, and I remember thinking, oh my God, like, wow, why you're allowed to wear chains in like the F1 paddock, and you know, his hair changing and his fashion getting more and more liberal, and just seeing him kind of flower and grow, kind of in a similar way that I've felt that I've been able to as I've got older and I've got to know myself, has been really cool. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But like you say, those McLaren years and Ron Dennis and how he had it, that was just how things were at the time, you know. And I think this is why, I think my roundabout point is, this is why he is such a trailblazer in this sport, because it's not just the in-car stuff. Incredible, obviously, we know that, but honestly, you know, for those who have witnessed his journey from the start, this is a journey of a man who's not just having to grow up as a sportsman and be the best, but growing up as a man, and then as an elder statesman, and then as an icon and a social activist. And, you know, if you told us in 2007 that Lewis would be leading social activism within F1 and invest 20 million of his own money into diversity in motorsport for STEM students and all that, we'd be like, what? Like, it'd be unthinkable. So it's just incredible to see.
2007 Lewis, just every time you saw him, he was like he was waiting for someone to pinch him to wake him up, because he still couldn't believe it was happening.
Yeah.
I was kind of like almost adorably enthusiastic.
yeah. But it was adorably enthusiastic, but also like you could see that devil inside of him, right? And you could see him, like, you know, the way the interactions with, you know, with Alonso, I guess a precursor to the Nico years, but, you know, you could just see the devil in him. But him, obviously, this kid is in F1. There's so much expected of him, and, you know, to come into the sport and have 9 podiums in a row is
crazy.
That's like, that is, and this is 9 podiums in a row in a 16-17 race season. Like, this is I can't remember how many races there were.
It's not as many as we have now, that's for sure.
Exactly.
So I think it was slightly more than that then, but Not by a lot, no.
Not by a lot. And just an incredible season. So yeah, that Lewis there, that sweet kind of almost meek Lewis, polite Lewis. I contrast that to the guy he is now, and it's been a up and down journey. It's not a linear straight line all the way to the top.
It's one of these things. It's like Nicky Lauda basically used to say, like winners or losers, he'd rather be a loser because if you're winning, you don't learn anything.
Yes.
Whereas if you're losing, that's when you learn everything.
Yes.
And you can look at Lewis's career, and it's almost like the troubles of 2007 with the whole Spygate thing going on almost as a distraction. 2009, a Liegate going on where basically it was like, do this, don't do that, do whatever.
Yeah.
And it being live over the air. So everyone right at the start of the year with a bad car, he's already got so much going on.
Yeah.
And then 2011, those years, so much learning and forming of like
1,000,000%. Look, we can even go into 2016. I definitely, it's 2016, and then parts of 17 and parts of 18. We have a driver. And I think this is what annoys me so much, David, about the narrative that Lewis is arrogant, right? And of course, there's going to be an element of arrogance there. All sportsmen are. You have to believe that you are the best. Otherwise, what is the point of you turning up on, on any day to any kind of activity that you're doing? So, of course, there's an element of arrogance there. But what we've seen in Lewis is an ability, is a humility to learn from mistakes, to put bad sessions behind him, bad seasons behind him, to learn, okay, that didn't work, relationship wise, how he is as a team leader now. Contrast that with even possibly how he was in 2011, how he was in 2009. And I just think it's just a really it's just like a wrong assessment of his character to call him arrogant when there's just so much proof of him being the complete opposite. And I think a really good point you make there is, about that ability to learn and bounce back from bad seasons, which is needed if you're going to be at the top level of sport for 15 plus years.
Yeah, because it's like during the McLaren period, you could see the raw ability.
Yes.
But this is the problem of always saying about, best drivers of their era, best driver of this, that, and the other, is that every season is different.
Yeah.
Someone might have an absolutely stellar season, might have the best car, and suddenly this other driver is suddenly not looking so good.
Yeah.
If you were to look at Lewis 2011 and judge him solely on that compared to like the other drivers around him, that's never going to be a fair reflection of where he is in comparison to them. But 2011, you would have said, say, Sebastian Vettel, for example,
of course,
was the best driver on the grid.
Of course.
But here we are, years later, they're still on the grid.
Yeah.
Seb's having a tough time of it.
Yeah, he's not having a great time, is he? And look, there was a long time where we were like, is Lewis going to be a one-time world champion? And it would have been, Vettel was on 4 and Lewis was on 1. And, there was people don't remember, there was big conversations about the discrepancy between what Vettel had and what Lewis had, considering they were the same age, came up in the same kind of era. Yeah. And, is Vettel 4 times more talented than Lewis? And look, on the flip side now, I mean, I will say it, but could you argue that Lewis is 2 times as better as Vettel? No, of course not. So, there is variance in season to season. This is an engineering formula, and that is always going to affect things. But I think the same way, I guess people can always kind of see Alonso extracting the most out of his car, I think Lewis has always done that. And I think, let's say even 2011, where, he seemed to be attached to Felipe Massa, and, I think there was an incident with Grosjean as well. you know, even in that season, he won races or a race. Sorry, I can't remember. Sorry, but he won. He won a race at least, and he still extracted a lot out of that Mercedes, and that's his worst season. You can look at 2009, and he drags that McLaren to a victory in Hungary, where he had no business winning that season in that car. 2012, you could argue, better reliability. We could be looking at him as champion in that season. I think 2010 as well. You could look at him potentially winning that season as well. So, and the same with Vettel. I guess, as we mentioned, 2017, 2018 particularly. There are opportunities there. Maybe Mercedes would have outdeveloped Ferrari anyway, but I don't like this idea of purely looking at stats and going, well, because of this variance in stats only, this is why someone is better than someone else, when there's so many stories within a season itself that don't tell the whole story.
I think there's two different types of driver almost. You've got ones who can drive anything they're given, who, if the rules and regs change, they can pick it up, test it to death, use simulator time, which Lewis has started doing because he's started to appreciate, it's another tool to help him, learn.
Yeah.
And they can get on top of stuff and go and win with it.
Yeah.
And there's other drivers who need a car to be a certain way to maximize it. But if the car is that way, very hard to beat. And I sort of get the impression that like Lewis and Fernando maybe are this side.
Yeah.
And say the likes of Sebastian Vettel, maybe Jenson Button.
I was going to say
Kimi Raikkonen are that side.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's been part of like Seb's problem and why we don't sort of have him in the conversation anymore is just because he hasn't been able to adapt to the bigger, heavier hybrid cars in the way that Lewis did, which is why it's gone the fight for 5 to the fight for whatever to, now like.
And for sure. And look, I get Sebastian Vettel a lot, and a lot of it is in jest, but a lot of it is because I grew up. Sebastian Vettel was the man. Like this, I think people say and talk about prime Vettel years, but you don't realize we thought this guy was going to break Schumacher's record. Like that was the trajectory. It was like we could not see anything other. Like for someone to win the title and the way he won the title in, let's say Brazil 2012, right? That is the markings of a man who is just at the top of his game, undefeatable. That mixture of skill, car, luck that all greats need to win title after title after title. So for me, seeing him now, it's such a descent from where I grew up watching Sebastian Vettel. And that's why I'm like, look, what we're watching now is such a departure from that. And that's why I'm like, we need to see more. And that's why, like you say, with Fernando, as much as I get Fernando, he'll like, even in the McLaren, he was getting the most out of that McLaren. Now, was he getting the most out of that team? Did he contribute to that relationship with Honda Sauer? Look, we don't know. But in terms of just him and that car on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he was getting the best out of it. And you can never accuse him of anything less than that. And the same with Lewis. Look at this season. I think we're two safety car kind of incidents from him having a lot more points than he does, and but he's still getting the most out of that car, and he'll always be able to do that.
I saw something posted on bloody Twitter today, as they do, someone going like, the FIA are having to try and change rules and stuff to make sure there's other world champions on the grid so that when Lewis retires, it won't look so vacant in terms of like people having championships and stuff. I'm just like, Lewis has had a title-winning car, not always necessarily won the title, for like 8 years in a row. But
Yeah.
the equipment has been there to do it. People are too used, almost, to him winning. It's like if he doesn't win, there has to be something wrong, rather
Yeah.
than just
You know
the
what it is?
team getting well done.
I hear it, David. You know what it is? I'll be honest. And I think, I guess the context behind a lot of that for a lot of people is
Yeah.
the fact that last season we kind of witnessed F1 as a sport start to prioritize the show over sporting integrity, right? For whatever
Yeah.
reason, right? You know, I think we all have our own theories as to why. Some people, you know, think it's an incompetent race director. Some people think it's, DTS bleeding into the sport or whatever. Some people think. Personally, I just think
WWF1.
yeah, and look, for example, the way that they had Christian and Toto in a press conference together, was it in Brazil or was it, I don't know, maybe it was in Qatar, and then they gave the appeal verdict from Brazil whilst they were together in that press conference. Sky Sports never stay online during that period, but they had Ted and the other guy there just having a chat, making sure they got this fit. You know what I mean? Like, the decisions, that were made by Massey, there was something there in terms of, we saw the sport change, and there was something in the media hyping Verstappen, two of the greatest drivers of all time. And it's like, oh, well, one of them is, and one of them is a very good driver, right? But, so I think all I would say to that is, look, of course, it's hard. Yeah, maybe I don't agree with that wholeheartedly, but what I would say is there is a skepticism of the FIA, of Liverpool, in that, and Sky or FOM, I guess, in that they're very excited to have these new players in the game, and I guess commercially it does work for them to start succession planning. So maybe some of the praise or some of the footage that we get is maybe a bit more overhyped, but I guess we can't just, I guess, we're not all going to agree on that. But I guess, I can see where that person's coming from, but I can see your skepticism for sure, because look, we weren't able to do anything through multiple regulation changes from 2014 to 2000. Well, should have been last year as well, but
You've been watching the sport for a while as well.
Yeah.
Does it seem too different to say 2005, when F1 was excited about Alonso coming through, Kimi coming through, Montoya coming through, and they changed that tyre reg, which completely stuffed over Bridgestone. So suddenly the Ferrari went from being like the stupidestly most overpowered equipped car on the grid to not being able to win a race, barely.
And that's a really good point. And I've never thought of it like that. I do remember that. It's still quite early in my days, but I guess that period is when I could say that I definitely started to have a bit more critical thinking about things. I grew up a Schumacher fan, by the way. I grew up a Ferrari fan. I used to draw little red cars on my on everywhere. I always remember, and as a kid, I used to be able to tell drivers from their helmets. I loved the sport. I loved Schumacher. Though. It was probably my first sporting hero was Michael Schumacher. So I do remember 2005 and how I felt. And look, no, it's probably not. I think, you know what? Yes, it is different, and no, it is not different. And I think what we have with Lewis, unfortunately, is that because of who he is as a black man in the sport, and the sport being relatively catching up, I guess, on how it reports on Lewis, how they, talk about Lewis and stuff like that. It's hard for Lewis fans to not see it as personal. because there's been so many ways in which Lewis, the way that he's spoken about, feels different to the way that other people are spoken about, and I guess other champions would be spoken about if maybe there wasn't the element of race involved. And look, does that mean that every time something happens, race is involved? Like, you know, it's an explicit issue of race? Probably not, but I guess there's always that underlying thing, and then with that comes a lot of skepticism from fans. So, you know, no, I think there's always, look, you can look at boxing, for example, when there's someone coming up through the ranks, and, you know, if they were to fight, you know, a champion, that fight is going to be billed as an equal fight, even though the champion may have a lot more accolades than the challenger, but the challenger has all of the potential.
Their recent record is they've done this many fights and they've all ended up in knockout. He's the talented up and comer.
Exactly.
So it's always the same when you have two people going like
exactly, and
it's like history and records mean nothing. It's them at that point doing that.
And that is it, right? And I think that's what happened, right, last year. And it's hard when, I guess, as a Hamilton fan, we have to fight tooth and nail just to feel like we get some kind of recognition of the magnitude of what this guy is doing, right? And then for it to then be, you know, the moment Max Verstappen has a title-winning car potentially, immediately it's like, well, okay, these guys are on the same level. That feels weird, right? Because what's this guy done to get this level of praise when Lewis struggles for that all the time? But, you know, fans are going to be fans, and, you know, we're going to have our own biases, and we're going to have our own way that we look at things. And I guess it's good to have conversations like this where let's talk to each other. And, you know, Twitter's probably not the place for that.
Possibly not, no. But it's like watching like multiple champions have been on runs and stuff in previous years. I don't know whether it's just an F1 thing or it's a sport thing in general, but nobody tires of someone being successful like a Formula One fan. Whether, you know, Michael and his titles and Sebastian Vettel getting his and being booed on the podiums and stuff years before Lewis.
For
and sure. People going, I don't care who wins so long as it isn't that German.
I remember it all.
So,
I do remember it all. It is. And again, this is it, right? Like, on the surface of it, for, you know, this is history repeating itself, and recent history repeating itself, right? I guess the added layer is, as a Hamilton fan, you could get racially abused at any moment just for supporting Hamilton and saying that he want him to win, and he does get abused, and so I guess, again, on the surface, this is history repeating itself, but because of Lewis and his unique position in the sport, there's always that undercurrent of, and this is the thing, there's no monolith F1 group, right? Team LH is not a monolith group. It's not a group where everyone is exactly the same. F1 fans are not the one, you know, even look, as much as I get at them, Max Verstappen fans are not all do you know what I mean? The same.
But the simple fact is, every fan base has its zealots and its extremists who will not want to have a conversation. They just want to rant.
For sure, and also you know, every person isn't booing for the same reason, right? We hear one boo in terms of boo, everyone's booing, but someone might be booing because they're tired of Hamilton. Someone might be booing because they love Verstappen. Someone might be booing because they don't like black people. Someone might be booing, like, but you know, all we hear is boo. But you know, and that's the same for Michael back in the day, you know, and it's the same for Vettel. People are going to boo for different reasons, but all we hear is one boo. But there's different things within that, and I think it's about taking a step back and realizing that there are different reasons why people boo. For sure, let's highlight maybe the worst reasons why people do, and let's try and keep it respectful. but
Yeah.
you know, there's multiple reasons why people might dislike a driver.
I had a few sort of things I'd written down just as ideas of what to chat about, and then naturally I put it all to the side and then forgot all about them.
It's been
So
a
we
good
sort of
chat.
covered bits and pieces. We sort of covered this one earlier when we were first talking about Lewis coming through. But it's like, you know, he's obviously been at the top of this game for like since
Sorry, David,
2007.
2 seconds. My girlfriend's just come back. I need to go let her in. She doesn't have a key. 2 seconds. Sorry.
I think we'll call this the Charles Leclerc Twitch stream moment.
Sorry.
It could be worse. I said as you walked off, you know, we'll call this the Charles Leclerc Twitch stream moment.
Yeah.
Well, at least your
Honestly.
girlfriend hasn't had to subscribe to a channel to get you to
Yeah.
learn.
I was literally about to text her and be like, "Where's your key?" But then I was like, "Oh, she left it on the side." So apologies.
I'm not sure whether to cut this bit or not because it's got comedy value.
Keep it in. Keep it in. Look, this is the reality of making content, guys. Okay, it's not all slick and sharp.
The amount of times I've had to apologise, like mid chatting to someone, because the dog's decided it's just going to bang into everything in sight for about 5 minutes.
Man, people don't realize making content, God, everything will go wrong. Like, anything you can imagine, and the things you can't even imagine will go wrong. But you'll put something out, and people just think that it's come out like that. But so much work goes into it. So look, I empathize for sure. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Right. What was I saying? So we'd briefly discussed like Lewis going through karting and everything else, and how we didn't, you know, basically money. Which kind of answers my question, but I'm going to answer it anyway because you might find more in the subject than I do. You know, Lewis has been on top of his game, talking racing, been on the radar, people naming their kids after him and all sorts since 2007.
Yeah.
But if you look at motorsport worldwide, on the grids in any series or whatever else, you know, you've got him, Pascal Wehrlein, kind of technically. Say, oh God, what's his name in the US? My brain's just gone completely blank. So this was a daft subject for me to start.
As in recently?
Yeah. In
Herta?
NASCAR.
Oh, in NASCAR.
Yeah. There's a documentary about him on YouTube,
Oh,
Netflix, and everything.
Oh, the guy.
Yeah, I've watched the damn thing recently. What's my brain on?
Bubba.
Yeah,
Bubba Wallace.
Bubba Wallace. Yeah. This is what I mean, though. It shouldn't be this hard to come up with a small list, even, of drivers who qualify. You know, and if you look down through the various categories as well, I've got to get down to F4 before I can think of anyone else who's black who's coming through. And you know, as I said, Lewis has been around since 2007, and there's, you know, I've been to plenty of races where, you know, kids are named Lewis or whatever else.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing
an
influx.
Well, you know, I think it's I don't know if you've ever watched there's a really good documentary, Tiger Woods documentary by HBO called Tiger. And I would really recommend it to anyone who likes sport in general, and then even if you don't, it's a great story of I guess what was put into Tiger to become where he got to, and then obviously we all know the downfall, and then the redemption in 2019. But you know, there was this big thing about Tiger Woods, right? And how he would start an influx of black golf players, and he would be the one to, you know, be able to lead social activism in the US, because, you know, what is more what could bring America together more than a black man excelling at golf, you know? But that's not how it worked. And no matter what was kind of placed upon Tiger, one, he was never going to be that guy to, you know, embrace blackness and kind of and move on with that. But two, the sport of golf, much like F1, but in different ways, is very inaccessible and is inherently a little bit racist as well. And that's the same with F1. And I think we're seeing, I think we grow up thinking that figures come in, you know, once in a lifetime people, they come in and they are able to change the world almost through a sheer
The
force.
trailblazers.
Yeah, right. Sheer force of power. But people didn't realize within those stories, there's a whole bunch of people that we don't know about who are doing work to change establishments, to change laws, to change whatever. And that's, I think, what is happening now with F1, with motorsport, with the wider world reckoning of racial injustice and inequality, right? And I think, like you say, you know, there are black drivers coming through. I know there's a kid in McLaren, Ugo, and I know around the world there are more people getting into sport, but I think, like we spoke about, was it off air or maybe it was, no, it was at the beginning of the chat, right?
Starting costs.
Until we find a way of making it as easy for someone to go-karting as it is to get a football and play football, you are not going to get people from underprivileged areas, which are where a lot of people from ethnic minority backgrounds are, because of racial inequalities and whatever, and just where they are in the world, you know, until there's more, it is as, you know, as accessible for someone to get in a go-kart and try go-karting and see if they're good at it and get into it and build a career and then get into junior formula. How many superstars do you think we've lost purely because of funding? You know, it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. So yeah, hopefully we'll see that. I think we'll see more and more of it. But I mean, motorsport, look, the cost of everything is going up, David. You know, I'm sure me and you are noticing when we're going to the shop, just the cost of doing our shop is going up. The cost of putting fuel in our car is going up.
Fuel is insane.
It's crazy, right? The energy bill, like, everything is getting more expensive. Everything is getting harder. And that's going to translate to business, and that's going to translate to families. And, you know, the choice between putting your kid through go-karting, you know, it's really taken out of a lot of parents' hands. And until it is either put back into their hands because it's me, you know, you can do it, or someone else takes it into their hands and subsidizes it, then we're not going to see any change.
So part of the problem is, as long as you've got people who are willing to throw 140,000 a year at their 8-year-old to get them go-karting, it's never going to balance out, because people are always going to, if there's an advantage to be had, take it.
I mean, look, let's look at Jamie Chadwick, right? Technically, what more can she really do at this point, right? You know, look, some could say there is a fundamental speed issue there. If she, you know, some say if she was quick enough, someone would pick her up or whatever. But, you know, in terms of the channels that she's got available to her, if she could fund a season in F2, she would. And as the only female driver, or woman driver, sorry, in, you know, who has won W Series, so, you know, you would think.
The thing is that the first season she sort of won a bit by default. The second one was a close run thing.
Yeah.
The first season, basically all the competition, none of them had the recent race experience that she had.
Yeah.
So obviously the more recent single seater experience very much came to hand. But, you know, Jamie's a decent peddler.
Yeah.
You know, I'd happily see her in a lot of things.
Exactly. And it's just, you know, the fact that she can't get into F2 because it, you know, we're looking at millions needed, multiple, you know. It's just, how do you fund that? How can someone possibly look to fund that, you know?
Well, she was looking at going into F3, but she was talking about needing about $1 million to do that. And the problem with F3 is all the chassis and whatever and the engines in theory are equal.
Yeah.
But they're not equal. Because if you're not in like one of two teams,
Yeah.
forget about it,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
You know, there's 25 drivers on that grid who are never going to win that title.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you know, do you spend £1 million to be in a midfield car in F3, or do you not spend £1 million? You know, it's a pretty easy decision, to be honest. So, you know, yeah, you know, F1's got a lot of work to do, and I guess Lewis has started that, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with sort of W Series, as we were saying to a certain extent, and similar with Lewis. You know, because my thinking was always like the current crop might not be the female Formula One stars of the future, but they might inspire the girl that's going to be.
Yeah.
But then we're back to the situation with Lewis and the lack of black drivers that have been coming through in recent years.
Yeah.
So will it be enough? I don't know.
Probably not. There needs to be big structural changes, big you know, increase in diversity across the board. And you know, I think until that happens, I think at the moment as well, you know, the FIA in motorsport, at the end of the day, it's a business. And we've just come out of, for any business, the worst period of business for a lot of people. Basically, any front-facing, customer-facing business has just come out of the worst period that they could possibly ask for. And we can see it in the way that they're hawking this championship out all around the world, the aggressive expansion in America. They want money. They want more money. Now, if I'm going to be naive, one day they're going to say, you know what? Now this is a multi-billion, you know, pound making enterprise. There's enough for us to siphon off this, subsidize motorsport at all levels and make it more accessible. Something tells me that won't happen, but if that's not going to happen, I don't see as how it's going to happen. It basically needs massively subsidizing, and how you subsidize that, I don't know, and I'm sure they'll figure out a way of doing it, but it is honestly like it just basically needs the FIA to take hundreds of millions of pounds, probably more, to then trickle down through the infrastructure all over the world to make it easier for people to get into sport.
Yeah, because it's crazy that, I mean, talking about drivers or whatever else that have been stuffed by like funding, for example.
Yeah.
There's a guy racing in British GC at the moment called Jamie Caroline. Jamie Caroline basically has took part in 2 full-time series his entire career, won both of them. One of which was British F4. People he beat included Logan Sargent and Oscar Piastri.
Okay.
But he couldn't get onto the next level of the single-seater ladder because couldn't get any sponsorship, despite being that guy, you know?
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
And it's sad, you know? You hear of all the people in football who don't make it, right? I think they say like, what is it? Like 0.5% of kids who go through the football system become Premier League footballers or something like that. I can't remember what it is. So like something ridiculous, right? Or British ones anyway. And you know, we look at them as statistics and we look at them as names, but these are people with dreams and these are people with talents, and they've dedicated their lives to this. And we just want more people to be able to fulfill their dreams. We want more people to be, and more diverse characters to come into the sport and to shine their light, and to be able to connect with fans across the road, and to inspire more kids to be able to get into it. This is an incredible sport. I watched this sport as an 8-year-old. My parents didn't know about F1. I think I must have sat down, stuck on the BBC and just gone, what the hell is this? Because this is incredible. And I was hooked. And I would have, I would have loved to try my hand at go-karting. I probably would have been. Now I know I'm slow as hell. That's not going to work. But I would have loved to try. And there's kids all over the world who have the dream of being in motorsport. And just on a purist level, it would be great for us to be able to facilitate more of that, and to not have people spend their lives essentially chasing an absolute pipe dream. There needs to be a better way into the sport than being born into money. And when a sport is when teams relying on people who have lucked into being rich and then honed a skill in the sport, that's not sustainable. So yeah, a lot of work to do, David.
Definitely. So we've talked sort of quite a bit about Lewis's racing. We've talked about, junior formulas, all that sort of stuff, about money. And as I said, under different circumstances, Lewis would be a footballer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not a great believer in the whole GOAT thing, because I don't think you can compare drivers from different periods and times and whatever else,
Yeah.
It's like, how do you compare Lewis's career to someone who won 2 titles and died? So, but you can't not have him in the conversation. I don't care where a person comes from, the numbers are the numbers. That has to be respected,
Bro, I'm not arguing with people about it anymore. I'm not. And this is I'm not. Okay. And we can't have a conversation like we've had today, right? And people are trying to tell me he's not even in the conversation. I'm fine with you telling me you don't think Hamilton is the greatest driver of all time. That's fine. I get it. There's so many factors, different areas, different cars, whatever, right?
I mean, I have to say to that conversation is, by the same token, I don't think Michael is. I don't think Fangio is. I don't think anyone else who gets run up the flagpole is either, because it's all under the same thing.
I understand, and I get that. I'm not going to say that. I think he's the greatest of all time. I've got no doubt about it. I'll sing that to the rooftops. And you know what? I've lived through it, David. I've lived through it from the very beginning as a teenager through to a man. And I watched Michael from the age, I missed Michael's 2 first titles, right? First world champion I saw was Damon Hill. But I was always a Michael fan. And I watched up. I grew up watching Michael. I grew up watching Vettel. I've seen Alonso. I've seen Kimi. I've been blessed to grow up in an era where we're looking at least I've grown up watching 4 of the top 8, 9, I would say, potentially. 10 at least, I would say. And for me, all I can say is, from what I can see, when I take into account all of the stuff we've spoken about today, right? We're just talking about a man who, we're talking about Jordan, Woods, who in football, I guess, Messi, Ronaldo. We're talking about people who are transcending the sport. And for me, of course, we're in an age where media and information travels a lot quicker, and I get that. If Fangio was about now, and I get it, right? I think I was listening to Missed Apex. I think Buxton had Fangio as his greatest, or he was essentially saying, could Lewis go into Fangio's car? No, but Fangio was 49 doing like a madness in different levels of sport. And I get that, I get that argument, but for me, I'm biased, and I'm happy to say that. But that bias is fueled by just such a great respect and admiration for Lewis, the man, Lewis, the driver, and how that has kind of grown through the years.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair enough. I say I don't say this stuff to be confrontational or
No,
anything else. It's
no.
generally just, people
It's
have an
great.
opinion, they're fully entitled to it. I always sort of have this idea that so long as they're not like actively abusing other people, people for the most part can say and believe what they like. But
Yeah. And look, I think that's the thing with F1 Twitter and social media in general, right? It's not just F1. Like, I've been on Twitter since 2009. I am like, you know me, you follow me. I quit smoking in 2012. I live a pretty clean life. I am addicted to Twitter. Okay, 100%. Okay, I'll happily say it. I am addicted to it. I know that website inside out, and all I would say is we're in an age where it's not even about who is right or wrong anymore. It's just about almost putting down someone else with your own opinion, right? And using your opinion to essentially belittle someone's identity, someone's intelligence, someone's passions, and whatever. And of course, on a level you're doing it as a joke, that's fine. But I think it's hard for us to have nuanced discussions on Twitter. One, because you're limited to 280 characters, and two, it's a public forum. If this
free for all.
conversation, if this conversation had, we have nearly 8,500 followers now. So if 8,500 people were here with one microphone and we're all just trying to get in, and then you've got hundreds of thousands of other people trying to come in and with one microphone trying to have it doesn't work, right?
It gets noisy and confusing really quickly.
Very quickly. And then
I don't want all your followers on my back. I'll be quite honest.
No, my followers are great. No, I love you. Don't chat shit.
I know they're a good bunch.
No, of course not. No, I think this is why I enjoy conversations like this. It's why I enjoyed the conversation we had with Sean Kelly. Yes, I am a Hamilton fan. Yes, I have things that I believe and that I think, but at its core, we all love watching this sport in different ways, maybe, but we all love watching this sport, and there's a shared interest in this sport, and it is within those nuances and within those divergences and things that we have, and within those differences and whatever, there is some common ground, and that's where the beauty of conversation about the sport are. And I'll happily engage in that all day. I'm not going to engage in it seriously on Twitter. You can have the jokes on Twitter, you can have the memes, and then that's what the podcast is for. We can have conversations on the podcast. I can come and do stuff like this. I can talk to people in real life. I can have conversations in DMs or in group chats. But the timeline is just, unfortunately, you have to accept that for what it is. It's a great tool, but it's also, a blunt instrument for what, we need as people who love the sport.
Yeah, because the problem is when you're typing on a thing, there's no tone to it.
Yes.
Or trying to show tone, or what you mean is, stuff can come across in ways it's genuinely not meant to.
Yeah.
And that can cause a lot of hassle.
And even me, I've just started, when we first started, oh man, if someone said something out of pocket, I'll just be like, right back. But I've just realized, just kind of, every now and again, obviously I'll clap back because we have to, but just talking to someone about, look, no, like that's not what I meant. Like this is what I meant. Like It's okay. Chill. Have a lovely day. Like we don't have to be battling. I don't want to battle with Twitter and people on Twitter anymore. I don't. But it's hard because, again, going back to this conversation, David, you know, as a black person doing the sport, you get people undermining your existence purely because they don't see you as equal because of who you are, and it kind of seeps into conversations about Formula One. It seeps into conversations about Lewis, and so a lot of people are defensive. A lot of people do start on the attack, and a lot of people do like to attack in various ways. And it's just it's a mess, man. It's a mess, and which is why, you know, yeah, it's good to be able to have conversations like this.
So the problem is, I don't. From my point of view, I mean, perhaps a little bit of background. When I say backwater of Suffolk, I mean literally. As in, I know I went
which end is Suffolk?
East Anglia.
Oh,
Go as
okay.
far east on the mainland as you can get. You find me.
Like Norwich, or
yeah, further east than that. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Nice.
I'm about 25, 30 miles from Norwich.
Okay, cool.
But we're literally like on Britain's most easterly point. I'm a 5-minute walk from the beach.
Nice. That's great.
But I went to school in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, I lived in one small town, went to high school in another small town. We're going back 30 odd years here. So, you know, might have changed a little bit.
Wow.
But there were 750 people at my high school in any given year. So over the course of the 3 or so years I was there, 1,500 students. During that entire time, one of them was black.
Wow.
So the problem is like it's understanding to a certain extent, because it's not, because I hear, you know, obviously I hear and I get told about this stuff and it's happening or whatever. I even see it on Twitter and I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Because I can't understand that because I've never lived it, if that makes any sense.
No, of course. Look, I remember during the whole Me Too movement, right? And I remember hearing women talk about experiences that I just could not even comprehend, you know? And you can understand it and you can sympathize it, but you can't empathize with it, right? Because what do I don't know about that. Like, I've never gone through that. I've never even considered that in my life. But I think that's where listening kind of comes in, learning, knowing, I guess. And I think that's the thing when it comes to discussions about race. I think people always think it's overt, you know, someone calling you a name, someone ridiculing your color, whatever, right? And it's not. A lot of the time it's not. It's this insidious undercurrent of racism that does happen. And in a sport like F1, where it has been very white, but there are a lot of fans now with this explosion of social media. I grew up, David, and look, I'll tell you where I grew. So I grew up in a place called St. Albans, which is just down the road from Stevenage, right? And at my school was in my year there were 3 black boys. I went to a boys' school. There were 3 black boys in my year. I think in the school there were like 5, right? I think in my primary school, again, there was about 3 or 4 in the whole school, right? I have always grown up like just thinking it being obviously very aware of my minority. In F1, I literally was like, no black people like F1, because I didn't see any visibility of it, right? And then you go on Twitter and you realize, like, wow, they love it. Like, there's a whole community of them. And then obviously with that, we're going through a phase where there are conversations that are being had in F1 and about F1, regarding F1, which are very new to a lot of people, and it can feel like an attack. It's very humbling when I was hearing stuff about how men can perpetuate violence against women without realizing it. And I was like, wow, there's maybe things that I've done I didn't even realize, things that I've said that I didn't even realize, things that way that I've acted I didn't even realize. It's a humbling experience. And I think when you approach it like that, and it's not like an attack, it's just people saying, this is how it is, this is how we feel. Just, I guess, when you talk about certain things, just keep that in your mind and appreciate that. I think that's what all people are trying to say. And I think if as long as there's like a humility around it, that it's not about you, we're not attacking you, we're just, I'm not saying you specifically, but like, we're not attacking.
Well,
we're not attacking you, David.
I watch your show religiously. I've very rarely felt the victim, unless it was an age comment, I mean, people call you uncle, and I'm like, bloody hell, I'm good 10 plus years older than him. Damn.
I just feel like I came into this thinking I was a young man, and then I'm now just like accepted I'm now an uncle. But yeah, we're just, and I think people feeling comfortable to be able to talk about that is important, and people feeling that they can talk about that is important. And I think people, white people and whatever, can participate in this community and help to make it better by just kind of listening, learning, and then actioning that, and then together it becomes better. And it already is better than what it was, and there has been progress, and there will be progress. It's just accepting that where we are right now isn't where we want to be down the road.
The problem is all progress takes time, and it's not until someone puts a marker down and says, right, we're going to do something, 100%, that it can actually happen.
1,000,000%, David. And that's what people
I think I think it was something Lewis said a couple of years ago, and I'd never even clicked on this at all. But him just talking about how basically coming into the paddock area, and just when you walk around and you're looking at the people and whatever else, and it's sort of like you don't see anyone else the same as you. So and until that changes, it's never going to feel, you're always going to have barriers and borders up.
100%. I mean, look, F1 in front of camera is a very glitz and glamour sport, but behind camera and in the paddock, it's a bunch of garages, it's a bunch of mechanics, engineers. It's not a glamorous sport, and especially lower down, like it's not a glamorous place to be. So yeah, him coming in, and and this is why him dressing the way that he is such, for me, it's just such an amazing thing. The confidence he has to go in and dress how he's dressing, and to change people's perceptions of masculinity in itself in such a masculine environment is great. And again, just that's another reason, David, that's why I've got to put him up there. There's just so many reasons, but it's really cool. And
it's a good show. It's self-confidence almost, isn't it? Being able to go into an environment and just be that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could never wear anything Lewis wears. I genuinely couldn't. I'd walk out the door and I would just be this ball of insecurity.
100%. Me too.
He owns it. Yeah. I don't understand high fashion at all, but he makes it work. So
yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's just more power to him, and he's inspiring people around the world.
Right, we are 1 hour and 9 minutes into this recording apparently, and only part of that was you having to open the door. I should obviously probably at this point say we'll have to wrap it up at some point. There's been a really good conversation.
Incredible, man.
Lots to talk about. Some of it was even about Lewis.
Yeah. I mean, look, this has been
It's always that way. I have this thing at the end of it. It's sort of like, whatever the subject was and other random subjects.
it's been good.
Because you do get carried away, you get involved, the subject expands, you
Yeah.
go off on tangents or whatever. It's kind of the nature of conversation, I think.
I was about to say that's what conversation is. We're here to converse. We're here to learn from each other. We're here to, you know, we're navigating that kind of that path together. And it's honestly, this has been one of my favorite interviews. Of course, anything, even some of the food stuff I've done, like this has been really cool. So no, thank you, and thank you for letting me come on late. I really appreciate it.
No, that's not a problem. I appreciate, the football has priority. I get it. It's not a worry.
It's a big season for the Gunners. I'm not gonna lie. So
hey, look, I've seen you with that picture of Gunnosaurus. I know what it means to you.
Yeah, I nearly sprained my elbow for that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Right, I should at this point say, obviously, you're from Quickstop F1, talking Formula One weekly at the moment because you've stepped up your game to not just being Formula One race weekends itself. This week you did an hour plus bloody Q&A session. I can't even remember if my question was one of the ones you answered.
It was not, because we were coming on, so I was like, I was going to talk to you on here, so I was like, let me talk to you on here. But I mean, bro, I actually had like 4 or 5 more questions lined up, and I was like, I looked at the time, I was like, I've been going for an hour, and I was in my mind, I was like, I've literally just been talking for an hour on my own. It felt so. I said I felt naked, honestly, because normally I've got one person there, 2 people there.
There's always someone to bounce off.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so just talking on my own for an hour was a new experience, one that I don't want to repeat. I'm not going to lie to you. But yeah, going to weekly, and it's that commitment, to, you look at, I look at platforms, right? You look at Missed Apex, you look at WTF1, and you kind of see, okay, like, there's something there, Tomo as well, I must say. Between those kind of 3, there's something that I think Quickstop could be on our own, in our own way. And to do that, we have to, you got to fake it until you make it. And I think we have to act and like a big platform, and a big platform needs to release content every week. And, that's the commitment I've kind of said that I'm going to do. And we'll see how it goes. But, we've only had 35 episodes, and we've got to where we are now, I guess. Yeah. So, if we could do that in 35 episodes, doing an episode every other week, I guess, what could we do if we did content every week? So that's the plan.
The thing is, what you guys have got on there is kind of an identity. You know who you are, you believe what you believe, you support the people you support, and it's all very honest, very genuine, and a lot of fun as it comes across.
Yeah.
So, but there's a structure and a program and an idea of what you guys are doing.
Yes, for sure.
There is a reason why you've got like 35 podcasts out and however many thousand subscribers. I have 98 videos out, 140 subscribers, and my last video I think is currently on 17 views. I think it was the last time I looked. So but it's people take it or make it with whatever they have and whatever they do. It's like, this to me is something I do because I enjoy talking racing. I enjoy looking up about stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't have, I struggle to make the time to do a video every week or whatever. Because, I mean, the thing is, if you're doing feature videos of stuff, as I said to you earlier, by the time you've done 7 hours of research, another 3 hours of scripting or whatever, shot the video itself, edit it with photos and bits of video that you're not sure you can actually use for copyright purposes.
Yeah.
It then all snowballs.
Look, people are always like, you guys need to do like short form videos, or you need to cut up your podcasts and make video. And you don't understand, like, already we're in a
Your
good
fan
position.
cam ones are just
doing like, I'm saying, like, so now I can do like a 1 minute teaser of the podcast for social media. I can do those in like 2 hours now, right? But I've got to do the podcast. I've then, if I break down a video, like I spend pretty much, I work, and then I close one laptop, open my computer, work on Quickstop F1 stuff. How many hours have I sat on Twitter interacting with our fans, building that fan base? How many hours have I spent sorting out guests? How many hours have I spent like making fan cams? Like, it is such a time drain. I would love to do videos where I research and talk about a subject and whatever, and I will do that. But again, I think at this point in time, it's about, I think the most efficient way is taking the podcast content and then chopping that down into more, and then using that for growth. And we, but for us to go on YouTube, that's probably what we need to do. But at the moment, it's just we're still trying to find our identity. And look, this isn't the first content thing I've done. Like, I do food content as well. So I spent 6 years building a food platform, and I guess I've been able to take what I've learned from that and put it into Quickstop. So I guess, I've spent probably like thousands of hours making content. So Quickstop looks the way it does because I spent 6 years practicing making food content, and I've taken that into F1. Tomo is a graphic designer. There's a reason why his stuff looks incredibly sleek. WTF1 have loads of money behind them. So like, it's, you can't compare yourself to other people, because we're all on our own little journeys, aren't we? And we're all doing this for our own, we all have our own passions and our own way, and we're all just contributing in our own way to this culture and to this sport. And you just, no one does it if they don't love it. And I think that's it. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. As long as we all love it and we're doing it for the right reasons, then big platform, small platform, in between, it don't matter.
I mean, it's like you hear Josh Revel and say Cranky Yankee and co talking about how they can spend an hour for every minute at least of audio they do, and that's before they get onto like the video and stuff themselves. I think Cranky Yankee, on one of his videos, bearing in mind like the full length documentary stuff he used to do, was saying he had spent 100 hours on it. That's one video.
That's crazy. And it's a young man's game, like, I wish this was about when I was in uni. Oh my God. Like, I used to write football blogs. This one, like, back in the day, there wasn't video. That wasn't I'm so old. That wasn't a thing. Like, video content wasn't.
How do you think I feel? I am older.
I hear it. And
I got accused. My wife said to me, "Is like this was my midlife crisis thing because I couldn't afford a sports car."
Look, I hear it. I'm in this spare room more than I'm in my bedroom, probably more than I'm in my kitchen. I love cooking. I hardly spend any time in my living room. I'm
in the living room now, but I had to wait until everyone else had gone to bed so I could spend 20 minutes moving around the furniture. I showed you the photo of my wonderful setup.
I saw, man. It is. Look, it's a labor of love. We all do this, as a labor of love, and it's great to meet people like yourself. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for always supporting from the start, showing me, I guess, that we can be ourselves, and people of all kinds will interact with us. And I honestly, we were really scared that wouldn't be the case. And all the comments, all the support really does mean a lot, bro. And I'm so happy that we got to chop it up, because this has been, honestly, it's been like it's not often I get to have a chat like this about motorsport. So it's honestly, it's been incredible.
No, I've always always in trepidation necessarily about having conversations with new people, because obviously you speak to people on Twitter, you post comments on like people's videos and stuff, but there's a difference between that and speaking to someone for what is an hour and 20 minutes now. We were chatting for a little bit before that, before the whole thing went wrong and we had to start it all again.
Yeah, of course.
So, but no, you are everything I was hoping you'd be as a guest. So, thank you very much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure.
I would say, do you want to talk about your channel? But we've been doing that for about the last 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. No, man. Quickstop F1. Find us there. We do, we're a podcast. We make content, and man, we're just unapologetically us. And you might like that, you might not like that, and that's fine. But we're always welcoming of people, and we try and interact with people as much as possible. And it's getting harder and harder, I'm not gonna lie, to interact with everyone, which is a blessing and a curse, because I did like it when we were a bit smaller and I could talk to everyone. But come and follow us and watch our stuff. And that's Quickstop F1, man.
I generally find that people have less time to communicate with me when they have sponsors. So,
Yeah, it's good. It's getting there.
Well done.
Thank you, man. It's look, I did food content for 6 years, and the only money that I really made was when I started doing supper clubs, and I did everything myself. Like I never had any brand partnerships, and that really used to get at me. I worked so hard, and no one ever really, and maybe it's a bit of me as well, of course, but for us to get to a stage where we're making, look, let me tell you now, it's not a big amount of money, but it is money, right? And someone's paying you because they like you, and they're sponsoring your content, and and we have different avenues of sponsorship, and it's just, for us, like I said, to have that so soon in the journey, I didn't envisage that at all, and it just makes me really proud of the community that we have, because it's because of them and the interaction we get as a smaller channel that people see, okay, this is something to get behind. So without our listeners and people like yourself who support us, we're just two people screaming into our microphone every week, and it's super cool. So yeah, once the sponsors come in, we're just so busy. But it's nice, man.
Oh, cool. Right. 1 minute 22. 1 minute, 1 hour 22. Right. I'm going to wrap it up there and say thank you, hopefully, to people for watching, and hopefully they've found it a good conversation as well.
I'm gonna share the shit out of this, man. So, sorry, I'm really trying not to swear. I've got such a potty mouth.
I was going to say your language has been very much more controlled today.
I'm like, when I go on other people's channels, I'm on my best behavior. See, I've got the polo one. So
I covered up my Gilles Villeneuve t-shirt I was wearing in case that was a bit too Ferrari for it. And then I realized my backdrop is like.
Look, you guys need to show out. If it was me, I'd be like, I'm Ferrari all over the place. I'd be reminding you what's going down at the moment. You must be really happy. So no, thanks.
It's awesome. Obviously with the last, people talk about how long it's been since the last one. So we're really, really hoping it'll.
Yeah, man.
It would be good. It would be. Obviously, I'm a slightly biased person, but I think from the point of view of the sport, having another team winning can't hurt.
No, look, I don't want it to happen, but I love Charles Leclerc. I've always loved Charles Leclerc. I just think he is. I was going to say something else, but I think he is everything the sport could want in an F1 champion. And I think how Ferrari currently conduct themselves, this iteration of Ferrari, Binotto's Ferrari, are probably the best front-facing version of Ferrari that I've experienced since I started watching the sport, in terms of how they are with media and the kind of the way that they portray themselves. I think it's a match made in heaven, that partnership, Ferrari and Leclerc. And I don't begrudge this period. I don't begrudge it at all because I'm just really happy for Ferrari and Leclerc.
Yeah. Well, Ferrari haven't done what they've traditionally done when it's all gone wrong and sort of panicked and thrown everything at like doing that. They've actually taken a step back and thought about, okay, this is changing. What do we need to do? And I hesitate to say it shows a kind of maturity of thinking in my team because obviously,
I guess.
I mean, part of the reason I love Ferrari is because it's an experience. It's never dull being a Ferrari fan. You know, when it's going good, it's fantastic. When it's going bad, it's interesting.
Yeah. I hear
So,
it, no, good luck for the season, bro.
looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. Yeah, hopefully your appreciation for Charles Leclerc still goes on later on in the series when Mercedes get their act together and start coming back at us.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll put him through the Max Verstappen test and we'll see how it goes. But no, I think he's really respectful and always speaks highly of Lewis. And I think it'll be really cool to watch those two battle it out. I don't think we've really seen that, to be honest. So that's Monza and I don't know. There was
no quarter asked nor given.
Yeah, no, you know what? Yeah, he did get his elbows out, and that is actually one of my. I love Monza. I'm gonna try and go this year, but that race is one of my. It's weird. Like I actually love that race. I think it's an incredible race. Because of 2018 and 2019 Monza are two of my favorite races for different reasons, but both just because it's great wheel-to-wheel racing between Mercedes and Ferrari.
Yeah, no, it's stunning stuff. Right,
cool.
I kept saying we was going to stop, didn't I? Right, this time, finally, thank you to people at home, people who are watching the video for watching. I hope that they've enjoyed watching it. They should have done because it's been a very engaging conversation. Hopefully the audio and everything is recorded fine at this point.
No.
And thank you very much for joining me on the channel. It's been
pleasure's awesome. All mine, bro. Thank you so much. Wicked. This has been awesome. I can't wait to watch it back. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye for now.
Take care.